Well, everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we're going to be comparing four different cartridges. We're going to take a look at the 223 or 556, if you will, compared to the 224 Valkyrie versus the 6.5 Grendel versus the 762 by 39. Now, in order to really understand the 224 Valkyrie comparison to compare that to the 6.5 Grendel, you almost have to revisit briefly the many decades of arguing over which was the better service round, the 5.56 with the lighter, faster bullets, or the 7.62 by 39. So I'm going to give you a fictional story. It didn't really quite happen this way, but it might as well have, because there's a lot of truisms in this fictional story. You had these guys over here, many people encamped in their positions that the lighter, faster 5.56 or 223 is the way to go. You're going to shoot flatter trajectory, more accurate, but they realize that they just don't have the downrange energy with that little 55 grain bullet. And so the people in the 7.62 by 39 crowd were not real threatened by that, almost laughing at them, if you will. So the 5.56 crowd said, well, we're going to sacrifice a little bit of our speed. We'll go from a 55 grain bullet up to a 62. And that started to get their attention. Then they went to a 69 grain bullet, sacrificed a little more speed, a little better downrange energy. And ultimately the 5.56 crowd went into a 77 grain bullet. Not all of them, but some of them. And sacrificed a little more speed to do it. Not to be outdone, the 7.62 by 39 people over here said, well, we got to do something to compete. Do we want to change our bullet weight? What do we want to do? They all said, no, let's not change the bullet weight. Let's leave that alone. It's normally been right around 124 grains. Let's pretty much keep it in there. Maybe we'll go down to 120, maybe up to 130, but kind of keep it in there. And, well, what are we going to do to get better distance? Well, we'll change it from a 30 caliber to a 26 caliber is kind of what they decided. So rather than a 7.62, they went to a 6.5 millimeter on their diameter for bullet, kept it right around 120 to 130 grains. And they went ahead and they added a bit more gunpowder in the new casing as well, called it a 6.5 Grendel. So then all of a sudden they're shooting really good at distance, a lot of downrange energy. 5.56 people, it's really got their attention. So they countered with something called the 224 Valkyrie. Again, fictional story, but this is kind of how it went in real life. 224 Valkyrie people said, okay, we're going to have to add even more weight to the bullet. We'll go from 77 grains up to 88, maybe 90 grain bullet. But this time, we're not going to sacrifice any more speed. We're putting our foot down. So that's how the Valkyrie was born. So we'll start by comparing the 7.62 by 39 to the 6.5 Grendel so that you can see what type of improvements were made, and is it enough improvement to make it worth your while to switch over if that's the camp that you're in. If you're in the 5.56 camp, we'll compare that to the Valkyrie so that you can see what type of improvements were made, see if it's worth your while to switch over. And then lastly, we'll compare the Grendel to the Valkyrie, and we'll see which one comes out on top. If you like today's video, don't forget to click the like button and do subscribe and turn on the notifications bell if you haven't already done so. And as always, we're definitely looking forward to your comments. Thank you again. Alright, what you're looking at on the far left is the 223 or 5.56 cartridge. On the far right, looking at the 7.62 by 39. And these are the bullets that the 5.56 will typically shoot. It started off with the 55 grain bullet, and in their attempts to gather more downrange energy, went to the 62 grain, moving left to the right, the 69 grain, and then the 77 grain bullet. Now in the picture is the 124 grain bullet that came off of the 7.62 by 39. So you can kind of see that the 77 grain bullet is almost as long as the 124, but it just doesn't have the diameter that the 124 grain has. Alright, what you're looking at now from left to right is the 223 or 5.56, then the 224 Valkyrie, next the 6.5 Grendel, and the 7.62 by 39. Notice that the Valkyrie and the Grendel look like they have almost the same case. The Valkyrie case is just a little bit taller before it hits that shoulder. The Grendel case a little bit thicker, but that's pretty much the only real difference there. We'll see if we can zoom in on this for you a little bit. Alright, and here's what we're left with. On the far left is the 224 Valkyrie, far right 6.5 Grendel. What you've got here is the 77 grain bullet that came from the 5.56 next to an 88 grain bullet that would go onto the Valkyrie, so you can see the difference in length of bullet. Over here you've got the 7.62 by 39 124 grain bullet compared to the 123 grain 6.5 Grendel cartridge just to its left. And we'll see if we can zoom in a little. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and compare the 7.62 by 39 compared to the 6.5 Grendel. The 7.62 by 39 that we're comparing is a 124 grain bullet compared to the 123 grain SST bullet by Hornady on the Grendel. One of the first things we'll take a look at is the ballistic coefficient, 0.297 on the 7.62 by 39 compared to a 0.51 ballistic coefficient on the Grendel round. So that is a substantial increase in your favor if you go into the Grendel round. Again, ballistic coefficient, the easy way to think of that is how efficient will a bullet be at retaining velocity and not being affected by wind as it goes downrange. When I pulled each of these two cartridges apart and weighed the gunpowder charge, I realized that the 7.62 by 39 had 24.8 grains of powder in it. That Grendel round, 30.6 grains of powder is what that was sitting on top of. So that's about a 23.4% increase in gunpowder that you're dealing with the Grendel. That increase in powder charge, what does that translate into in terms of speed increase? Let's take a look. Starting speed on the Grendel, 2590 feet per second compared to 2350 feet per second on your 7.62 by 39. It's roughly a 10% increase in speed, and it's a lot more increase in terms of energy right off the bat. You've got 1832 foot-pounds to start compared to 1520 foot-pounds of energy on your 7.62 by 39. Out at 200 yards, you're still dealing with 916 foot-pounds of energy on your 7.62 by 39, so that's not bad at all. But take a look at what you have on your 6.5 Grendel, 1390. Incidentally, why is 1390 important? I'll tell you why. That's more than a 77 grain 5.56 has at the muzzle. And it's about the same as what a 88 grain bullet by Valkyrie, the 224 Valkyrie, it's about the same as an 88 grain bullet from Valkyrie would have at the muzzle as well. So keep that in mind. A huge edge in terms of just pure energy to the Grendel round. As you go out there to about 500 to 600 yards, somewhere in there is where that 7.62 by 39 is probably going to go transonic on you. I'm just going to call it 550 yards to keep things simple. As far as the Grendel round, you can go all the way out to 1,000 yards and still be above speed of sound at 1223 feet per second. In terms of wind correction, your wind is cut in half at 1,000 yards with the Grendel. Instead of being thrown off by 201 inches on your 7.62 by 39, you're cutting that in half. You're only off by about 97 or 98 inches on the Grendel. In terms of the drop, again, you're cutting that in half as well. You would be off by 771 inches compared to 385 inches. That's just about a 2-to-1 ratio. So you're cutting your drop in half, you're cutting your wind correction in half at 1,000 yards to be in that 6.5 Grendel. In terms of pure energy, you've got 200 foot-pounds of energy left on that 7.62 by 39 at 1,000 yards, compared to 408 foot-pounds of energy still left at 1,000 yards on the Grendel. So really just, it's almost not even worth comparing, but sometimes you just have to compare just to make sure that one is substantially better than the other, or substantially different than the other, I should say. Okay, in this column right here, we're going to be comparing the 77 grain 5.56 or 2.23 cartridge, if you will, compared to this column, 88 grain 2.24 Valkyrie column right here. We'll start with the ballistic coefficient. We've got a BC of 0.372 on your 77 grain bullet 5.56 compared to a 0.545 BC on your Valkyrie. That's pretty close to the same ballistic coefficient of a 140 grain 6.5 Creedmoor bullet, just to keep that in mind. When I pulled each of these two cartridges apart, I realized that and I weighed the gunpowder charge, of course, the 77 grain 5.56 was sitting on top of 24.5 grains of powder, a little bit less than that on the Valkyrie, 23.8 grains. That's actually a 2.85% decrease in powder charge on the Valkyrie. In terms of speed at the start, 2720 compared to 2675, pretty close horse race there. Real slight edge to your 5.56 cartridge. But take a look at the raw energy numbers, 1265 foot-pounds compared to 1398 on the Valkyrie. So substantially more energy right from the opening bell. At your 200-yard mark, if you're zeroed at 200 yards, you're already about 100 feet per second faster on your Valkyrie, 2356 compared to 2256, and noticeably more energy at 1,084 foot-pounds compared to 870. In terms of wind correction, it's starting to already show an edge toward the Valkyrie. You're only going to be off by 2.63 inches if you have a 10 mile an hour left to right wind, compared to 3.86 inches off if you were to stay with your 77 grain bullet 5.56. In terms of how are they doing at 500 yards, your 77 grain bullet is going to be dropping by nearly 54 inches compared to 47 inches of drop on the Valkyrie. But the real difference is going to be in wind correction. You're off by nearly 28 inches if you have a 10 mile an hour wind. And if you're going to stay with that 77 grain bullet, off by nearly 28 inches compared to roughly 18 inches. That's 10 inches better off in terms of wind correction if you go with the Valkyrie. In terms of where do these cartridges start to go subsonic, you'll notice if you stay with your 77 grain 5.56, somewhere between 800 and 900 yards, it's starting to slip below the speed of sound. Whereas if you stay with if you go with the 2.24 Valkyrie, you'll notice that at 1,330 feet per second, you're easily above the speed of sound, even at 1,000 yards. In terms of drop, if you were to stay with your 77 grain 5.56, you're going to have about 455 inches of drop at 1,000 yards compared to 341 inches of drop on your Valkyrie. So you're going to be 25% better off on the Valkyrie with drop numbers. In terms of wind correction, if you were to stay with your 77 grain 5.56, you're 139 inches off if you have a 10 mile an hour wind compared to being only 85 inches off on the Valkyrie. So I know that 85 inches off might still sound like a lot, but that is still a 61% improvement in wind correction at 1,000 yards. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and compare the 2.24 Valkyrie to the 6.5 Grendel. We'll be looking at the 88 grain bullet on the Valkyrie compared to the 123 grain bullet on the 6.5 Grendel. Ballistic coefficient 0.545 on the Valkyrie compared to a 0.51 on the Grendel. So if you do go the Valkyrie route, you're about 6.8% better off with your ballistic coefficient. In terms of powder charge, when I took both cartridges apart, I realized that I had about 23.8 grains of powder on the Valkyrie, about 30.6 grains of powder on the Grendel. And again, the cartridges I took apart were the Hornady Match 224 Valkyrie 88 grain ELD match, and that's compared to the Hornady Custom 6.5 Grendel 123 grain SST. So as far as the powder charge, I realized that I had about 28.5% more powder in the Grendel. In terms of the velocity numbers, it's pretty close at the start, 2675 on the Valkyrie, 2590 on the Grendel. But take a look at the energy numbers, 1832 compared to 1398, so you do have about 31% more energy at the start in favor of the Grendel. Out at 200 yards, you're about 100 feet per second faster with the Valkyrie, 2356 compared to 2256. In terms of your wind drift, if you factor in a 10-mile-an-hour wind left to right, not really enough wind drift to fight about either way, with a slight edge to the Valkyrie, 2.63 compared to 2.96 on the Grendel. Out at 500 yards, though, your drop starts to become a little more noticeable. The drop on the Valkyrie, 47.4 inches compared to 52.2 inches on the Grendel. So you have roughly 10% more drop at 500 yards with the Grendel. Your wind drift, 17.9 inches on your Valkyrie, 20.36 on your Grendel. That's roughly 14% more wind drift on the Grendel and about 10% more drop on the Grendel at 500 yards. But if you're willing to take those numbers, if you want to put up with that, you're going to get rewarded, though, with 889 foot-pounds of energy compared to 720 on the Valkyrie. So your Grendel will have 23% more energy. You just have to decide, do I want to put up with 10% more drop and almost 14% more wind drift? In terms of will they both stay supersonic out to 1,000 yards, the answer is yes, easily yes for the Valkyrie at 1330 feet per second, 1223 feet per second on the Grendel out there at 1,000. It's probably not too hard to figure out that the Grendel is going to go transonic before the Valkyrie will. I just don't know at what yard marker, really. In terms of the drop out there at 1,000 yards, roughly 341 inches on your Valkyrie, 385 on your Grendel. So that's roughly 13% more drop for the Grendel at 1,000 yards. In terms of your wind correction, 85 inches of wind on your Valkyrie, almost 98 inches of wind correction on the Grendel. So at 1,000 yards, basically the Grendel is going to drop 13% more than the Valkyrie, and it'll have roughly 14 to 14.5% more wind drift than the Valkyrie. If you're willing to take that trade, you'll have 408 foot-pounds is what you're hitting with, though, on the Grendel, compared to 346 foot-pounds on the Valkyrie. So you're going to have a bullet that hits with 18% more energy at 1,000 yards if you're willing to take that trade-off of more drop and more wind correction needed.